The first thing we have to do is get our paper folded, and we're going to start by folding it first in one direction and then in the other, just top to bottom, so that we get like a T shape. So we'll have sort of 4 quadrants or 4 squares. And then after we do that, we're going to be folding it again kind of from corner to corner. So let's just find the bottom corner and we'll bring it up and over. And be very precise here. Make sure that you get it exactly against the other corner. We want to make sure you find the middle of the paper because we're being like really careful to get 8 equal pieces in its entirety. So make sure you push down nice and hard on those creases and you're very firm so that you have a very strong line and there's no confusion when you start drawing. So now let's open up and we're going to go in the other direction so that we're folding from the other corner, one corner to the other corner. Okay, so we've basically folded now in all directions. And when we open it up, we're going to have those 8 equal sections. And what we're going to do is only start our drawing in one section. So you don't have to do this part, but I'm doing this to kind of show you where I'm focused. I have one of these triangular quadrants, or I'm sorry, not a quadrant, one section where I'm going to be doing my drawing. So this is where my design is going to start. And this is a creative decision that you can make. You don't have to do something similar to what I'm doing. The way I'm drawing this is I'm leaving it so that the line kind of stays open. I'm not drawing a closed shape to start with. I'm leaving some of these shapes so that they just bump right up against the line right next to it. And depending on what you do, you're going to get a very interesting, very different looking design. You can draw little floating shapes like I'm doing in here. Definitely keep your pencil light while you're working on this part so that you can erase if there's something you don't like. You don't want to push down hard right now. When you're sure and you're tracing as we get to that, then you can push down hard. But in this beginning part, you might find that you don't like a mark and you want to get rid of it, so be careful with that. I'm just kind of making these sort of swirly shapes and lines, and like I said, I'm kind of pushing up against that line there while I create this design. So this is what I want you to be doing, is only draw in one of the 8 pieces. Okay, imagine this is a pie. We're just drawing one slice of pie. So we're going to be copying this design over and over until we fill in the whole sheet. Okay, so we're just focusing on that. Don't go past that little eighth or that little triangle that we're drawing in. We're going to go right up against the folded line and not past it. If you go past it, then when you start tracing, you're going to find that you have some difficulties. So you're really restricted to that one section. And just continue on until you get the design that you like and that you think is going to work. If you want it to be more organic, you're going to draw more curvy lines. If you want it to be more machine-like or angular, you might be drawing more hard lines like triangular lines or rectangular lines. So before you start, you might want to think of the feel you want to have for it. And the kind of line that you draw is going to really give a certain feeling to the drawing. Even if you're not drawing something that we can recognize, you can still get a feeling by depending on what kind of line that you use. So at this point, I'm happy with my little quadrant. You now have this paper. Okay, so I'm lining up my paper square over my drawing, and I'm just tracing those lines onto my tracing paper. And I'm doing it in a way where it's nice and neat and it's up against the edge. You will have to carefully hold the paper in place, so you just want to push down with, in my case, my left hand. Since that's not my dominant hand, I'm holding it down still with my left hand. And when I trace this, I am pushing reasonably hard. I want to get a good amount of graphite on the paper. So when I do kind of flip and trace this, it transfers, and you'll see how that works in just a few minutes. So take some time and carefully trace your original drawing. Okay, so once I've traced that, I'm now going to flip the paper over so that my graphite is now touching the paper. And I'm going to line it up into that next triangular section. And I want to make sure that my design matches. It's like a mirror image, like butterfly wings, so that I can now trace it with my pencil. And while I push down and trace it, it's going to transfer the graphite. So the graphite is going to leave a mark wherever I push my pencil. So you do want to be careful, slow, hold your paper as still as you can. And you want to push down with a little bit of pressure. You don't need to push down super hard, but the graphite or the pencil that's on that opposite side of the paper will leave a mark. And so that you'll have a copy of your design in reverse on that side. What I'm doing now is something that's going to save me time as I go on. So I'm just tracing everything that I can see through the paper on the other side. And I'm doing that because that will save me the step of doing one triangle at a time. If I trace the whole thing now, when I flip the paper over, I can basically trace the entire square or quadrant of the image. So you'll see how I do that in a minute. But what I want you to do is just carefully, again, trace that original image. We're just basically now getting our graphite all on one side of the paper by tracing it again. So that will kind of speed up this process. But we still have to be careful. Hold your paper very still and push down so that you have enough pressure on your pencil that you're getting a good amount of that graphite onto the tracing paper. So I have now traced everything onto my tracing paper. I have graphite on one side, and now I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to carefully line it up so that it matches the drawing right next to it. And at this point, I can start tracing everything into that one quadrant. So I've saved myself a lot of time by drawing again or just retracing the original pattern. So we want to hold this very still. Don't go crazy with your pencil and rub back and forth because you're going to have to see this image clearly, because after we finish this section, we're still going to have two more squares that we're going to have to trace this drawing onto. So take your time. Also, you can easily lose track of your design while you're doing this because you've got pencil on both sides. So sometimes you can't remember if you traced a shape or a line or not. So while you're doing it, you can carefully just push down and lift your paper up so that you can see where you stopped. And honestly, if it gets out of alignment or you move it a little bit, that's okay because it's real easy to line it up again with your first drawing. So you can always readjust it if you kind of pushed it out of place or you accidentally moved your hand or something like that. So don't worry about accidentally moving the paper. It's not going to destroy the drawing by any means. You can always find where you need to line it up again. So like I just did right there, I lifted it to check and see what I haven't traced yet. If you need to darken some of your lines, that's okay. Now we basically need to flip the entire square over again to mirror image on the bottom. So we're going to just continue this process of tracing, checking your lines, and then flipping the paper over until we filled in every quadrant. Okay, so now I'm moving on to my last little square that's left, so I'm just flipping it over. If I've been careful about it, it should line up just right with that top square and also the bottom square that's over to the right. And I'm just gonna do this last bit of tracing. I have plenty of graphite on the paper as I keep tracing over and over, so I should have no problem transferring the image again. So just go ahead and finish up this last square, and then we're going to move on to the fun of coloring this in. Lastly, you might find that when you look at it, you'll realize that you missed something that you just didn't see right away, and you still have your little bit of paper, so you can just line it up again if you miss something and retrace that. So just carefully check your pencil drawing before you move on to coloring to make sure that you've got all of your designs in place. This is an optional step, and it depends on the kind of look that you want for your drawing. But I'm going to go ahead and carefully trace all of my lines. And you can do this with a Sharpie, with a pen, with a black colored pencil, or a different kind of darker colored pencil, so that as you add color, you'll still see those strong, bold lines that you initially drew. But if you did want to skip this step and you wanted a little bit more of a subtle or not so bold coloring choice, you could just start coloring it with coloring pencils. Once I get to this stage and I have it the way I want it to look, I can go ahead and start coloring. As I said in the introduction video, if you have a theme for your colors in mind, like you want it to look like autumn or like summer, or maybe you want to have a rainbow, or you maybe want to have a galaxy theme or something like that, just carefully choose your colors before you go ahead and start coloring. Also, don't forget, you don't just have to color everything a solid color that's right in the pencil. You can mix your colors, and you can easily do that by applying different kinds of pressure. So if I want to blend some colors, I might push hard a little bit in the beginning with my pencil to get a darker color, but then I can lighten up and put a light layer color and go back over it with another lighter colored pencil, and that will nicely pull my two colors together. So don't be afraid to experiment a little bit with blending and see what happens when you mix two of those colors together.